Okay.
Um, Good. I'm here with Dr. Mordecai Ogada from Kenya. Thank you very much for talking to me. And
No, thanks for having me.
I'd like maybe to begin by if you just take a minute or so to say who you are and your background.
Hi, I'm a wildlife ecologist from Kenya. I've been in the conservation field for about the last 20 years, mostly in the field of carnivore ecology, but more recently in the areas of human dimensions of conservation, conservation policy, especially as it relates to the rights of indigenous people who live in and around the wildlife, the important focus areas of conservation.
And what do you think of this Aspinall project to so-called rewild a herd of elephants from Britain to Kenya?
Yeah, fitting with the species they're focusing on. It's a huge absurdity, even in a field like conservation, where the absurd has almost become normalized. I think it has no contribution whatsoever to conservation as the principle we seek to pursue. These elephants, I'm not sure, I've read, but I'm not sure where they were taken from in Africa. But the taking of live wildlife from Africa itself is a problem, and it's an injustice that was done for many years. But it cannot be assuaged somehow by picking these few individuals, spending a huge amount of money, a huge carbon footprint to bring them back to Kenya and sort of weave this tale. But I can see where it came from. Similar tale was weaved around white rhinos that were taken from Sudan some years ago to a zoo in the Czech Republic, and then were returned to Kenya, not Sudan. And millions of dollars and many stories were woven around these rhinos that were claimed to be the last northern white rhinos, but they weren't. So it's a commercial self-actualization search for fame and fortune.
And talking about the actual movement of these animals, I mean, I remember, I think it was a couple of years ago, WWF had a hand in moving, I think, 11 rhinos from just one part of Kenya to another. Do you remember that story?
Yes, yeah, that was 2018, and the generally move from my experience, even handling the smallest animals is wild animals is an incredibly stressful experience for them, and fraught with danger to them and people as well. So we are, the rhinos that were moved a couple few hundred miles from sort of one end of Kenya to the other by road, and they found it very hard to acclimatize in the new place, and we lost all of them. It was a tragedy. Um, not to say that it's automatic that these elephants are going to die, but that just illustrates the degree of difficulty in terms of logistics, veterinary care, stress on the animals, and adjustment to new environment that's going to happen here. And for five, had they six animals? We've got 35,000 elephants in Kenya. You're not contributing anything to our elephant conservation. And it's just a story. It's just bizarre that a huge carbon footprint, a huge amount of money is being spent, which could be better put even to purposes within conservation than that.
Yes, there are actually 13 elephants, I think,
Okay.
including a couple of babies. And you've mentioned the carbon footprint. It's 4,500 miles flight, and collectively, apparently, they weigh some 25 tons. The a member of the charity that's doing this, the Aspinall Foundation, is actually the wife of the Prime Minister of Britain. She is Carrie Johnson, and she has co-authored an article in a newspaper with the head of the charity, and they say, and I'm quoting here, with the fall in tourism during the pandemic, the pressure on habitat from farmers and poachers is growing sharply. How do you react to that?
That's a complete myth, and a very popular one amongst conservation people, because they keep touting this myth that tourism contributes to conservation. Tourism is a byproduct of conservation. Conservation is a principle that goes on with or without tourism. From my observation, wildlife and habitats are actually doing better because of the crash in tourism, and no big tour vans crisscrossing the landscapes, running over cheetah cubs or hyena cubs and small mammals and that kind of thing. And they hunt without stress. Predators can actually sit at a kill and eat it without 80 vehicles around them, and they're doing just fine. So that fallacy is that it's like it harks back to the racist wolf whistle, that the only reason Africans are able to live with their natural heritage is because white people value it and will come and pay to see it. No, we're doing just fine. Thank you very much. And I think I think we need to separate this, the self-actualization that so many people seek through this charity work in conservation, from the real conservation itself. So I think the elephant population in Kenya will be fine without these 13 more individuals, and they should not pretend that the bringing of these elephants is in any way contributing to our natural heritage. It's completely of no use to us whatsoever.
The story is getting a lot of attention, and there are quite a lot of professional environmentalists who've echoed what you're saying, who've been very critical of it. But it's also true that the mainstream media, which includes the BBC, which had the story on its website, haven't reported the fact that there is this criticism. Why do you think that might be?
In fact, I had been wondering, just until you mentioned the involvement of the PM's wife in it, because I'd been wondering, why is this politically sort of going so smoothly? Transfer of wild animals across international borders, iconic species like this, is always such a big deal with diplomacy and all the questions and answers. But I was shocked at sort of how clear a path they had here. But so now I see obviously that there is a very strong political underpinnings or diplomatic connections that are helping this work out. The other thing is also the David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, which will host these animals here, is very well connected, both in the Kenya wildlife sector and the UK government and elite circles. So this is an elite dream, an elite project to pat themselves on the back and make some money and have some good. There's always wonderful photos. I've already seen them coming out showing crates of the elephants trying out their new wonderful crates, and I'm sure there'll be photos. There's already documentaries ready to be made of how they're doing during the flight, maybe being given watermelons to eat or something like that. And I can see it all coming. But that's what it's all about. It's really nothing to do with us, the Kenyan people, nothing to do with the cause of conservation or the value of our natural heritage. If they cared anything about that, there's 100 different ways they could use a tenth of that money.
I don't know if you knew this, but the Charity Commission, which is the government body in Britain which regulates charities, is actually investigating the Aspinall Foundation and has been for some months. And it's got an investigation because there are serious concerns about the financial management. And I wondered whether you knew that.
I'm not. Yes, that just came to my attention after this whole story broke. But it's not surprising. One of the major achievements of conservation was sort of developing financing models. And one of the key things they managed to do is make conservation, put the conservation into the same place where charity exists, the same policy place. So there's all sorts of tax breaks for things done in conservation. For example, if someone came and bought a 5,000 acre piece of land and built a luxury retreat on it, which people do, it can be, all that can be chalked down as charity because they did it for conservation. They bought that land to keep these destructive natives out. They built that luxury retreat to attract well-heeled tourists who will find whose payments will help finance conservation, and they run that as charity back in the countries of origin. And this poses a very stiff challenge to those tasked with the job of auditing these kind of things, because it's not the same it's not the same as someone going to Southeast Asia to help victims of a tsunami or something. It's not the same. This is luxury. This is self-actualization. This is right at the top of the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm personally pleased that they're getting that kind of scrutiny, because I've said many times before that conservation should be held to the same standards that everybody else is. And so many countries, including Kenya, to do that. And I think it's a sign of a positive change in the way the public policy around conservation. We must scrutinize it a lot more.
Yes. Finally, I wanted to say it's come to my attention that this Aspinall charity, which has been in existence for several decades, I think was started by the father of the current chairman, and in 1967 he said, this is John Aspinall, he apparently regretted, and I quote, that mankind allows retrogressives and aberrants to breed without restraint. And I wonder what you thought of
It's
that as a background to a
it's
conservation.
it's pretty bizarre, but surprising commonplace in conservation, because in one of my recent pieces I wrote that one of the things, the red flags in anyone's personality, is this irrational professed love for wildlife in a faraway land, because it's directly proportional to their negative attitude towards the people of that given land. Someone celebrated as a famous conservationist like Gerald Darrell. There's a lot of casual racism, backhanded racism in his own writings. He casually refers to local people as beagles, and all sorts of derogatory terms. He casually refers to his own mistreatment of wildlife in the course of saving them, lighting fires under trees to get the monkeys down so he can take them back to England. A mongoose in my pocket is or in my suitcase was commonplace to him, despite his professed love for these animals. And so it's almost some sort of it's cognitive dissonance that happens. Like the hatred for indigenous people goes hand in hand with this professed irrational love for wildlife. Because if one cannot love wildlife in isolation from the place where it exists, the people who live around it, the other species that live around it. So the love focused on a single species to me is always a red flag as to a personality flaw in someone. And Aspinall's statement doesn't surprise me at all. But what the truth is that where we are in our state of knowledge now, we must call this out and stop just celebrating these heroes and putting them on pedestals. They're as messy as the rest of us.
Well, thank you very much for calling this out, Dr. Ogada, and
Yeah.
let's see what happens next.
Yes, I hope it will all be a learning experience by the time that the dust settles over all this.
Thank you.
All right. You have a good day.